And what we want to do is we want to whet your appetite, pique your interest into these different synagogues. And I would like to take a quick poll. I'm going to throw out just 3 names, and I just want to see hands. I want to see hands. Hang on.
You can't do that.
Oh, I can't do that?
You
Okay.
you can if you come out of presentation, you can see hands.
All right. Bob, can you see the hands?
No.
No? Okay.
You
So
have the screen. You have to come out of presentation to see hands.
all right. So I'm going to stop share.
Okay.
Stop share. And hello, everybody. First
Now I
of
see
all,
everyone.
hey, everybody. Okay. Thanks for joining now that I see who's here. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so here's question number 1. How many people have been to the Tenement Museum in the Lower East Side? Okay, it's a smattering. I would say at least 50%, maybe 30%. Okay. How many people?
You know, there are 3 pages
Oh, all
of
right.
people.
All right. So 1, 2, 3. Hello, everybody on this page. Hello, hello. All right. Okay. All right.
Look,
How-
I this too.
How many people have been to the Angel Orensan Center for an event? Okay, that's much less. Okay, I got a real treat for you coming up. You're going to be interested in this. And how about the Eldridge Street Museum? The Eldridge Street
That's
Museum.
got a lot of.
Yeah, I see a lot more hands for that. Okay. All right. So now we go back to the share screen.
Yeah.
And
Click on
here and share.
Good.
Okay, so we're back.
Next slide.
All right. Okay, so let's go over what the purpose of today's virtual tour is. First one, if you came to us from the Jewish Standard, the Jewish Standard was very specific. They said our presentation was about the 4 oldest congregations. They were close. It was some of the oldest delegations, but I'm going to list them for those people coming from the Jewish Standard so that they have it.
Then we're going to tell the story of the first Jews to form a congregation in Manhattan.
We're going to explain a very common migration pattern for some of the oldest Jewish congregations on Manhattan.
We're going to give you the tools to create an actual self-guided tour of these congregations.
And we're going to make some restaurant and food establishment recommendations to enhance your actual tour. As most of you already know, I can't go for more than a week, more than an hour without food. So we have to stop. We have to stop along the way.
Next.
Okay. All right. So we are going to start with the 4 oldest synagogues. For those of you that were interested in this, we've got a combination slide here. This on the left upper, can you see the arrow, Bob?
I can. Yes, you can.
Okay. This is Anshe Chesed. It is the oldest standing, 1849. Susan?
Next on the lower left is Hassam Sofer, originally Rodef Sholom, built in 1853.
And then here, I think might be the most famous in all of New York, the Central Synagogue, built in 1872.
And on the right is the Eldridge Street Synagogue, now a museum, which everyone seems to be familiar with, built in 1887 by the Herder brothers, who were German, not Jewish, but they knew enough about synagogues to be able to build a beautiful synagogue, now a museum.
And this slide is for those, again, coming to look for a list of the 4 oldest synagogues. We just touched on each one of these. We just showed those pictures. Now, this is the actual synagogue that is standing. Over here on the left, you have the four oldest congregations, whether they have a building that stood all these years or not is not important. So Shearith, Israel, you may know it as the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue. They were the first in 1654. And then that broke off into B'nai Jeshurun, 1825. And then two more that we'll be discussing, Anshe Chesed, we've already touched on, but we'll have a lot more about that. And Share Zedek, 1837.
So I'm going to start the discussion with talking about the Spanish Inquisition back in 1492. And the Jews lived in Spain and Portugal until 1492, where they had to make a choice. They could either be killed, or they could convert to Catholicism, or hide their identity, or leave. And we're going to talk about the ones that left, and they dispersed all over. And the Jews that made it to Holland or the Netherlands lived there peacefully, and they got to realize that the Dutch were very good to the Jews. In the meantime, the Dutch were busy doing their exploration, and they went out and they explored North America and South America, and they established trading posts with the indigenous people there. And on their travels, Jews came along. And we're going to focus on 23 Jews that were from Recife, Brazil. And from Recife, Brazil, they came, but they left Brazil because the Dutch were overtaken by the Portuguese, and then it was no longer safe for them to practice Judaism. So again, they had to decide if they were going to stay or leave. And these 23 Jews left, and they wound up in the island of Manhattan, which was also Dutch at the time. And they were greeted by Peter Stuyvesant, who did not want to let them in and settle, but the Dutch West India Company overrode his decision and said, yes, you have to let in these Jews, because there were a lot of Jewish shareholders in the Dutch West India Company already. So that's the very beginning of Shearith, Israel, which actually means remnants from Israel. And this was the only congregation in New York City from 1654 to 1825. They were Sephardic Jews, and they were Orthodox. And they did not have a building for many, many years. They met in each other's homes. And the first building that they did have was this little synagogue on Mill Street down on the left, which is now South William Street, and it was consecrated in 1730, and it was the first structure designed and built to be a synagogue in the continental North America. However, it is not standing any longer, so you can't visit that. What you can visit is their present location on the right, this beautiful building built in 1897 on 2 West 70th Street in Central Park, just south of Strawberry Fields, and this is still standing.
Correct. And we now move to...
So they didn't have land to build synagogues originally, but they did acquire land to bury their dead. And you see on the right, the cemeteries that were created for the first Spanish and Portuguese Jews that died. And the first cemetery is at 5557 St. James Place in Greenwich Village.
No, actually it's further south. It's
Sorry.
near
Okay.
Chatham Square.
The second cemetery is at 72 West 11th Street. And the third cemetery is at West 21st Street between 6th and 7th Avenues. All these cemeteries are still in existence, although we don't think anyone is actually buried there anymore, but you do see the placards and you do see the headstones, but they're so faded that you can't tell who was buried there. And on the left side of the slide is pictured this rabbi, Henry Pereira Mendez. He was one of the rabbis of Shearith, Israel from 1877 to 1920. And we mention him here because he also was the first co-president of the Jewish Theological Seminary. So the connection between the JTS and Shearith, Israel is that some of the first meetings of the JTS were held in the Shearith, Israel synagogue. And down below is Solomon Schechter, who was the second president of the Jewish Theological Seminary, and he was the originator of conservative Judaism.
Okay, all right. Bob, I think it might be a good time to take some questions.
If there are-
All
somebody's-
right, see if I've got some questions in the chat here that we might want to look at. I presume you're including Shearith Israel, of course, which you have, so that someone has already brought that up, but you've handled it.
Okay,
You mentioned that Streit's matzah factory moved to Orangeburg, New York, or moved out of the city to Orangeburg, New York. Is anyone familiar with the so-called Cantor's Synagogue on Rivington Street? You know anything about that, Steve? The Cantor Synagogue on Rivington?
yes, it is one of my favorites because I don't know if they've started building anything on it yet, but for pretty much the last 6 to 8 years, as we take people on Rivington, we put them in front of a fence and behind them is nothing because there is nothing there.
Wow.
It fell in on itself after 106 years. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame, but that's, what happens. And there are some synagogues on this tour that luckily did not have that fate. But there's plenty of synagogues that literally caved in on themselves.
Do you know of, is there a building at 2 West 70th Street still operating as an active shul? You're familiar with that? 2 West 70th Street. Does that sound familiar to you?
It does. I believe that
That's this one.
that might
That's
be,
the present location of Shearith, Israel.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
they
So
don't.
we've got that covered.
They don't have it open to the public too much, so you really have to get in tune with the synagogue itself to find out when you can get in.
Oh, all right. Here's one that may be a stumper for you.
Go ahead.
What shul did Chaim Solomon go to, financier of the Revolutionary War?
I am going to have to get back to you on that one.
All right, you're gonna have to go into your books of knowledge and dredge that one up and add that to the tour for the next conversation.
I am Solomon.
Okay.
Chaim Solomon, financier of the Revolutionary War. See if you can find out where he davened.
I'll write it back. I'll write it down. We'll get back.
Whoever asked that question, they
right.
get one free ticket to a Kornblit tour
Wow,
in the future.
dump the Kornblits, very nice.
They say, but don't get cocky, everyone. That's it. That's it.
That's all the tours, that's all the tour tickets you're giving out. All right, I understand.
Because and I want to admit it's because it's easy to stump me, so it's okay.
No, you got a lot more knowledge. So let's hold off, but that's all the questions I got for right now.
Okay.
Again, if people have questions, throw them into chat. Throw them into chat if you would be so kind. And that will make it easier for us. And at the end, there'll be plenty of time for questions. So Steve and Susan, continue.
Okay. All right. Okay.
They can't see that.
All right. So right now we are focused on Anshe Chesed. And what we found a few slides ago was that Anshe Chesed, which was built in 1849, is the oldest standing synagogue in Manhattan. Zachary Taylor was the president. It would be 11 years before Abraham Lincoln came along. So this was built before Abraham Lincoln was here. And what we what we do is we move over to the second synagogue. Then this slide just gives you a progression. What's great about this presentation is that you can move throughout Manhattan on one slide in 60 seconds, whereas when you're doing a walking tour, you can't do this very easily. So the second synagogue is up in Harlem. It was built in 1908. Teddy Roosevelt was president, and it is still standing. You'll see soon that it's a church now. And the last synagogue for this particular synagogue congregation is on the Upper West Side, and Calvin Coolidge was the president.
Hey, Calvin Coolidge from New Jersey, you remember.
Ah, very good. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so what I want to show you on this slide is not something we're going to spend a lot of time on. However, we've got I want to give you tools. Okay, so the goal of this whole program is I'm going to give you Susan and I are going to give you little tastes of the information. But after we stop the presentation, I want you to be able to have tools to go see these places and have literally a roadmap. So what you're going to see, I won't spend so much time on these moving forward, but I list the name of the congregation. I put their spots. This is down in the Lower East Side. If you want to take a ride up to Harlem, you got the second location and the third on the Upper West Side. And in blue are the temples, the congregation spots, and in purple is the food, which of course everyone knows that's the most important thing to me. The food is listed here on the bar here, and it's just going to be a very handy way for you to see it.
I just want to remind you to say to them, Steve, that if you email him, he'll send you this map. And once you get the map and you click on the A or the B or the C, you'll actually bring up that synagogue and see like a Wikipedia article and a picture about it.
Right. So there's some interactivity that I can't do on the presentation, but if you send us your email, we can send you some bells and whistles. Okay. All right, so we're still with Anshe Chesed congregation. Their first building was 172 Norfolk Street in the Lower East Side. Now it is the Angel Orensanz Foundation. Okay.
So this synagogue today is an event place where we stumbled upon this. We actually went inside, and inside is a beautiful space that they were getting ready for an event that evening. It was catered. The caterers were there. The big screens were being blown up. And it was originally this synagogue, but it was in disrepair for many, many years. And in 1974, it was abandoned and vandalized. And in 1986, it was taken over by these two gentlemen on the left, Al Orensanz and his brother Angel. They were Jewish brothers born in Spain, and they bought up this synagogue and redid it and gave it new life. And today you can have your bar mitzvah there, your wedding. It's a beautiful venue, and Angel is an artist himself, and he features his work and work of other people there. So you would go to their website and look at like what events are going on and see what they have on display. But it is such a beautiful thing to see that they save the synagogue. Although it's not a functioning synagogue, you could have a Jewish event there.
Yes, and I'd like to go back to this slide for a second. This architecture is unbelievable. It is Gothic. It will remind you of all the famous Gothic churches from Notre Dame It also has the Basilica in Rome is also part of what this is designed as. And as you can see in the middle, it is an unbelievable space for a wedding, for a bar mitzvah. You can have any.
Didn't Lady Gaga sing there?
They do have cultural events. Lady Gaga has sang there.
Alicia Keys.
Alicia Keys. So you can see that it's getting a lot of use, and it has a spectacular setting. And just a quick mention as far as the immigrants. Bob was talking about the immigration that exploded during these years. A lot of the Germany, Holland, Poland was the split off. And I also want to mention that part of this congregation also split off in terms of reform, because part of their congregation went to Addis Jeshurun, Temple Bethel, and then they merged with the famous Temple Emmanuel, which we're not going to really be showcasing, but I do want to mention it in terms of this presentation. And we saw Angel Orensanz. And now we move from the Lower East Side, we're moving up to Harlem. And the second building from Anshe Chesed is right here in the upper left. And if you look over to the right side, you'll see that it's now Mount Nebo Baptist Church. And if you look closely in the pediment here, you'll see the 10 Commandments, the scroll, the Torah scrolls here for the 10 Commandments. There are some Jewish stars on the other parts of the building. And when you look inside at the balconies, you'll look inside here. There are balconies for women because it was an Orthodox church, Orthodox congregation at first, and they're utilizing the balconies. Okay, now we are going to move to the third movement where they went to the Upper West Side. And this building is a very impressive building. It's, I don't think anything could take that building down. It's Byzantine architecture. It relied heavily on Roman temple features, massive symmetrical shapes and towers. And look how beautiful the interior is. This had seating for 1,600. And Edward I. Shire was the architect. And they have fallen on some hard times. There's a lot of people sharing this synagogue, and it is under the conservative banner for now. Okay, so Bob, let's look and see if there are any questions from Anshe Chesed, because we're ready to move forward if not.
All right. Someone asks or says that if you're taking history, I presume you're including Shearith, Israel, the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue, of course, which you did from 1654. Let's see, anyone familiar with the so-called Cantor synagogue? I gave you that. Let's see, where have I not gone? Let's see, is it possible? Okay, we'll hold, some people won't like us to hold the questions to the end. I guess they're enjoying what you're sharing. Of the synagogues that are still standing, which ones have active congregations? You can add that as you go.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's very fair. So,
Kornblit Stumper, do you know of synagogues in East Harlem around 106th Street? Someone's father's family lived there. Do you know the synagogue in East Harlem?
No, I do not. I do not, but we will take the information down and we will.
106th Street.
106.
All right.
Okay, good.
Get back to you.
Good.
A fun fact about Anshe Chesed on the Lower East Side, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, the mobster, and his dad have memorial plaques there.
Wow, that is great. Who shared that?
Phyllis.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Okay.
All right.
And see, for those of you who are members of Temple Israel, Shelley and I went to Marcy and Brian Del Torre's wedding at Angel Orensan's about 15 years ago. So the Torres
I
were
do, I do remember that. Shelley told me that once
right.
before. And I remember now. Yes, he's been there. And we had another member, I don't know if she's on, but she told a funny story about how when she heard where the wedding was going to be, she was horrified because it was the Lower East Side, when the Lower East Side was not a pretty place. And she tells the story that they kept telling her, don't worry, it's going to be great, it's going to be great. And when she walked in, she was just floored.
How beautiful.
Yeah, because you're basically going to one of the most beautiful Gothic structures that are there. So thank you for those stories. I
All
appreciate
right, so it's back to your presentation.
Okay. All right. So now we are up to the second congregation. And for those of you paying attention, you're going to see a familiar picture. Doesn't this look a lot like the congregation that we just left? And the answer is yes, because they sold it to Ohab Zedek, Love and Righteousness. The first Hungarian congregation purchased it from the previous synagogue. So this was their first place. They bought it. And I want everybody to see that each congregation will have its own map for you. If you want to get it, you will have a map to go point by point. And then we're taking it up to Harlem, and it's 1908, and it was an Orthodox congregation. And if you look on the left, you will see the Jewish stars in the facade. And there are some other items of Jewish background in the facade. And this is Gothic Moorish, and it became abandoned. But before it became abandoned, this was turned into a Baptist church. And you can see here the Jewish stars are gone. It's now a window on each side. And of course, the front of the building, they creatively turned that into a cross. So it was repurposed into it, but unfortunately their church didn't do so well and it's abandoned at this point. So this was the second. Okay, and then this stunning page, if you notice, this building was built in 1926, Upper West Side on 95th Street. And it's the Moorish, again, the Moorish feel. And it's very similar, I'm sorry. It's very similar in terms of the two rectangles here. So they were going for the same look. And now we're back to it. And look at the interior. Oh my goodness, the balconies are here. Balconies are here. This is the main floor. And look how stunning the skylight is. I have not been inside this yet, but I am planning to get there. Just spectacular. That was their third building. And the very interesting thing about this particular congregation is that they brought over a cantor named Josela Rosenblatt.
So Josela Rosenblatt was not just any cantor. He was considered the greatest cantor of his time. He was born in 1882 in the Ukraine, and from a very early age, he began to sing in the local choir and synagogue. He was about 8 years old, and he was noticed to have this wonderful voice. He moved to Vienna and Berlin, and then he accepted a position at Ohab Zedek in 1912. He had the most beautiful voice. NPR did a talk on him and said that people would come from all over just to hear him sing. He had a great influence on the cantorial golden age, and he actually didn't invent, but he perfected the way cantors sing with that emotional struggle in their voice. And we'll play a clip for you of that. One of the stories is that the Chicago Opera wanted to have him work for them, but he turned it down because he would have to have sung on Shabbat, and he didn't want to share a stage with women. So he was very Orthodox, and he was very, he just wanted to be a cantor. He was actually in a movie called The Jazz Singer, and he played himself. He wouldn't play another character, but he did play himself, and we will try to play a little clip of that for you.
Okay, so what we're gonna try to do is go to here.
No, leave.
Oh,
No, not leave. Don't leave.
okay.
Go to, no, you have to minimize it. Where's your desktop?
No,
Escape. Now, up here.
okay, you
Hineni.
start with Hineni.
Yep.
Okay, let us know, Bob, if you're hearing it, right?
Oh, you're not sharing. You haven't used the share screen yet.
Go here. Go back to here.
Share screen.
You're good.
Good, good. Thank you, Susan. You're hearing this because of Susan. If it was just me, you would not be hearing this.
Let them listen. Now. Okay, now go up to the next one. Move that out of the way. No. Yep, now go here. Now, this is the movie. Can you see that yet?
Yes,
No. Okay, yes? Okay,
yes.
good. That's Al Jolson. Good. I think we got a taste of that.
You share?
No. Click on
Stop.
here and pause it, and then go back to your slides. Escape. No, that's wrong. Hold on.
You share?
No, go to Zoom.
No, it's not on Zoom.
Well, as Susan and Steve were saying before, 1912, if he was singing at this time, was the time of your grandparents or great-grandparents. And he would have been known in that age. And this was a golden age in Manhattan, considering the migration of Jews from 1880 to 1912, 1920, or 1915. So it would have been amazing at that time. But I'll let Susan and Steve share more.
I just wanted to say that although he's long deceased, he died in 1933 and he's buried in Jerusalem. There's a bit of a comeback for him. Not all, but many of his recordings are available on YouTube. And of course, that movie, The Jazz Singer. So, it's very interesting to actually hear him and hear in that time frame what it meant to the Jewish community to have such a superstar. He was considered like a rock star for his time in that Jewish community. And actually not just for Jews. The Chicago Opera wanted him to sing for them. So it's a fun thing to reconnect with.
Yes. And I think this might be a good time to just spend 1 minute talking about, now that we've introduced Harlem as a migration point for these congregations that were down in the Lower East Side. Sometimes the Lower East Side gets romanticized, but at those years, it was a ghetto. It was a slum. People were on top of each other. It was not a healthy place to stay. And the real estate situation in Manhattan, it was kind of very similar themes. The technology grew in terms of transportation. Harlem became possible with subways and trains, and people were ready. Certain people that had been here for a while, they got their money together and they were ready to make a move. And Harlem was a new area of development for real estate, because real estate always kind of beat the subways. They found out where the subway's going, where the train's going. Okay, that means that Harlem is going to be a good place to live. And so they started building there, and the Jews kind of followed that path along with other ethnic groups. And that is why you're seeing these paths going up to Harlem. Okay. All right. So we leave Yosela, and we are at Shaarei Zedek, and I think we have to go back one. Okay. All right. So we are now changing to a new congregation, Shaarei Zedek, and that's Gates of Righteousness. And this is their first building that was on Henry Street in the Lower East Side. And you'll notice the architecture is that Moorish architecture. Every time you're wondering whether it's Moorish, just take a peek at these horseshoe archways over the doors, and all of these along the top as well. And they were formed in 1837. They were made up of Polish congregants, and they bought land from Anshe Chesed. But this particular building is no longer standing. It happened to be on 38 Henry Street. The second, you'll notice again, they went with the Moorish look, and it's very similar to the building they left down in the Lower East Side. This is still standing, and it's featured prominently on a Kornblit tour to Harlem. It's on 118th Street. It was built in 1900, and the architect was Michael Bernstein. And yep, and as I mentioned, it has a similarity to the first temple. And again, here is the map that will show you the destination points. And this starts to get very, very interesting because when it comes to real estate, you're going to hear a very similar, familiar story here. So they moved, their third building was on the Upper West Side, and it was on 93rd Street, and it's no longer standing. And look how pretty the building was, and look how beautiful the interior was. Again, with the balconies for women and the main floor. And what happened, oh, just a little piece of trivia. In 1923, it cost $300,000 for the building, and they paid $100,000 for the land. And it took them till 1944 to pay off the mortgage. And in 2017, they demolished this beautiful building for economic reasons. And here are the economic reasons. Bayside Cemetery. Not 100% sure. I'm sure people out there know. Bayside, I believe, is in Queens. They had a bunch of societies that owned the cemetery. Hundreds of societies owned little pieces of the cemetery, and they've all gone away. And so it was costing them a huge amount of money to keep that cemetery, and they needed cash, and they needed cash big time. So what did they do? This is a typical real estate move. They decided to sell the property, and this is an artist rendering of what's coming. They decided to sell the property. They are going to keep the bottom 2-3 floors for their congregation, and rising above them will be condos. So if you want a short commute to Friday night services, I would suggest this apartment right here. You buy that apartment, you can get to Friday night services probably in 30 seconds. And
You gotta pay the price.
yeah, but you have to pay the price. So here we go. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, $1,875,000.
It's a bargain.
It's a bargain. And you've got common expenses per month, $1,200-1,300, and estimated real estate taxes, $1,000 per month. That's for a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And here you've got 6A is available, 4 bedrooms. So that's a cool 4.855 million.
Not bad.
Common costs are $3,400 a month, and estimated real estate taxes $2,769. Okay. If I sold a spot, I want the commission. So make sure you tell the real estate agent I get a piece. Okay, Bob, I just want to stop for a second and ask for any questions up until this point.
Sure, let me see from the last. Why do you think Ashkenazi Jews chose Moorish architecture? That could be on the stump the Kornblit question. So if you don't have an answer to that one, it's okay.
Well, it turns out that if you, for instance, if you check to see the synagogues that the Nazis burnt down on Kristallnacht, you're going to see a lot of Moorish synagogues. Not all of them, but it was pretty common in Europe to have Moorish style architecture, even in the Ashkenazi countries. So it really is not that uncommon for the Ashkenazi to use the Moorish. It didn't just come from the Spanish or the Portuguese.
And when did you say that the synagogues migrated to Washington Heights?
Washington Heights, I don't have a specific answer for Washington Heights. The fact that we were looking at Harlem is why we focused on where those, and they seem to go to either the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side. But there were, a lot that went to that area. I just don't have their history.
All right. And here's one which we'll have to sort out from Stephen Bergen. It said Bugsy Siegel and his father's Max's plaque is in the Bialystoker Synagogue in Willett Place in the Lower East Side. So
Nice.
we'll have to figure out how many plaques he's got and how many synagogues to figure out where he's memorialized. So you'll have to add that special little note into
Okay.
the.
I got
Authentic-
All right.
We'll do a Bugsy Siegel tour.
Absolutely.
That will get you a big following.
That will be fun. That will be fun. And
We'll do the migration of Bugsy Siegel.
yeah. And the Bialystoker, what's fun about the Bialystoker is that they were tied to the freedom train in the slave days. That was a stop for many Black people that were fleeing from slavery. And it's a great synagogue in the Lower East Side.
All right, back to you.
Okay, so now we are back to Yad B'Yad, hand in hand, and also called currently the Temple Israel, city of New York. And this particular slide is just a composite of all their locations. They had this church in Harlem, and this is a little bit different in terms of their migration. This is later on. This is 1887. The Jews were already up in Harlem. They were already on 3rd Avenue, and they populated this particular synagogue. And from there, in 1907, they built this particular Romanesque style building. Arnold Brunner was the architect. And then they went to the Upper West Side. And, oh, I'm sorry, my fault. Upper West Side. And this is more of a Greek architecture, Roman and Greek. And then up on this area is their final stop, which is over on the Upper East Side. And you may not be able to tell it from this particular shot, but it's called brutalistic architecture. There's no fancy anything. There's nothing on it. It's just concrete. So I want you to see that I have one of these maps for you if you ever want to take each one individually. This is the story of buying the Catholic Church. And in terms of who they were, Yad B'Yad, who they were, people of moderate circumstances, many owning small stores on 3rd Avenue, living behind their shops. And where were they from originally? Originally German, but they were already uptown and near Harlem. And in 1888, they changed their name from Yad B'Yad to Temple Israel of Harlem. And then we go here to the temple, the Greek temple, Romanesque temple, and that's at the corner of Lenox and 120th Street. It is a church now. And they also, in 1909, the congregation joins the Union of American Hebrew Congregations. So they now belong to Reformed Judaism. And as you probably already know, the German Jews well before the Holocaust were aiming towards Reformed Judaism. Okay, and then when they went to the west side, this is on 91st Street. It was their second building, and it's classical revival. And you can see the Greek columns and the pediments. And this was Tachau, I'm not sure how he pronounces it, was the architect. And they changed their name again, Temple Israel of the City of New York. Now, when they left this building, I don't know if you can see it, but right on the awning, you see Young Israel of the West Side. That's the synagogue that's in there now. And then we finish up with the last building on the east side, and they call this, I love this line, brutalistic architecture, and that's because there's no ornamentation at all. It's straight concrete, and this circular geometrical shape is also part of it, I have a particular connection to this architect because Peter Klaman of SLCE, Samantha Kornblit works at SLCE. So that's just a coincidence that we like. Okay, so we are now at almost 8:30. So we are an hour in, Bob.
Please keep going.
Okay, all right, we're going to keep going. So what I did, technically the presentation is over, but I want to show you some of the tools that Susan and I put together as well. So it might be natural for people to want to see, just go to the Lower East Side for the day. And what I've done on this, which I will make available to you, is I've placed the different spots on Shei Chesed and the cemeteries for the Shearith, the Museum of Eldridge Street. I put them into the Lower East Side map, and we put the food establishments on this map. So you could take this and do your own Lower East Side, and you'll see the different synagogues that we discussed. As far as this particular slide, I want to point out two people that are on this. Do you recognize Jimmy and Martha Margulies? They are here, and they are under the Katz's sign. As far as I'm concerned, the Katz's sign is the most important sign in this entire presentation, because they give me my combination turkey and pastrami sandwich. All right. And okay, and Yonah Schimmels, you might know that Yonah Schimmels is on the map for their knishes. And just 2 doors down from the Sofair synagogue is the Clinton Street Baking Company. And this place is phenomenal for any kind of breakfast food you could ever possibly want. And many of you know about Russ and Daughters. There might be some of you that don't realize that not only is there a store for picking up the lox and the dried fruit and everything, but they also have a cafe. They also have a cafe, which is great. Okay, and here is the same idea. Now here on this map are all the Harlem synagogue sites. Here is a nice slide for anyone associated with Temple Israel. This was a donated tour by Kornblit Tours. And here's Manny Haber. And here are all the people from Temple Israel that went on the tour. And I can't recommend Amy Ruth enough. And here is your map for the Upper West Side, and the one on, there's one synagogue on the Upper East Side, and that is available again if you just give me your email. This particular slide is for food on the Upper West Side, and Gazalas, for those of you who know the Druze people from Israel and Syria. The Druze people are Arabic, and they are allowed to be in the Israeli military. So we get to meet them when they come on the Zahal Shalom meetings. So we know their food is wonderful. This is an example of it. And good old Zabars, Susan's pointing at the senior citizen discount. She's not quite there yet.
You got it, I did.
Ah, very good, Susan. All right, and then I promised that I would show you 2 of the very important resources for this particular tour. And these books, this book I got from the library, this book I purchased, so I'm not 100% sure if that's available at the library. And Susan's going to handle the last slide.
Just to wrap up, we're going to show you our website where you can find our tours. Our website is www.kornblittours, and we have 5 tours that we're featuring that are coming up in June, July, August, September, and October. We go to Jackson Heights and we eat on our food tour. We go to Harlem for the Gospel Grits and Jewish Harlem tour. We go to Greenwich Village for our poetry tour, and the Lower East Side, and then the Financial District. So hopefully we'll get to see you in person when things are, well, they are opening up now, so it's perfect timing. And we will see you on a real tour, hopefully soon.
Bob, do you want to take any last questions?
Sure, let me see what I've got for us here. Someone reminds us, if you go to the Lower East Side, don't forget the Economy Candy Store, which I've been in.
Tour, yeah.
Yes,
Candy
Rivington.
store. That's they've got every candy known to modern man, I think there.
Yes,
If you're
Rivington.
looking for Pez or things that you can't buy anymore, you have to go there. Let's see what else we've got for you. How do the people, this one you might be able to handle, how do the people travel the distances when their synagogues moved? How do you reply to that?
Okay, there were some interim steps for some of them. For instance, one of them opened their Harlem location and kept their Lower East Side location for a while. And then it became financially an issue. So some of them did that. One particular synagogue, as I mentioned, split off. They had Reform Judaism go just to like Midtown, and then their conservative or their Orthodox went up to Harlem. So there was some splitting like that. And you got to remember, there were hundreds and hundreds, millions of Jews coming to New York. So there were plenty of Jews going around to all sorts of different places for their synagogues. And we haven't even touched all the Jews that went to Brooklyn, that went to Jersey, that went to Bronx, that's another, a whole nother aspect.
All right, fantastic. Why don't you come off of your presentation? Let's go back to full screen.
Okay.
Sorry, you're there. That's great. Let's open it up for a minute or two, or for however long. If anyone has any questions for Steve or Susan, or things you'd like them to investigate, I'm sure they're always interested in that. Why don't you unmute yourself and raise a hand, or just call out and identify yourself, because we are multiple screens, and see if Susan or Steve can answer your question. Go do it.
Don't be shy.
Okay, we're not forcing anybody's hand. That's not a.
Don't know the answer anyway. It's okay.
I just want to tell everybody out there, this is Susie Goldstein. Shelley and I have gone on many of your tours, as you know. Those of you who haven't, I highly recommend it. I think this was just a taste of their presentation tonight, of how wonderful they are and explicit. And I just want to thank you for this evening again, for your time. And as you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Susie.
you.
Steve, did I understand? Anybody else have any questions before I chime in? Go, Alan, go.
Yeah, the question came up before about Chaim Solomon, and I was looking it up, and according to this, he was a member of Congregation Mikveh Israel in Philadelphia.
Ah, that's the financier in the revolution.
Correct.
Correct.
All right, Steve, add that to your notes.
And Bob, it's
Who
Fred.
died broke. He died
Freddie.
broke because we never paid him back.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And Steve and Susan, thanks. It was a great presentation. I just want to let you know the shul that you have, I forget which one, on 116th Street, has been knocked down in the last 6 months. So unfortunately, it's also going to be condos now. You got one of the last shots of it in your presentation.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's what happens when you don't go out for a couple of COVID years.
Yep.
Well, I hope they got some good money for that, and they can start that synagogue somewhere else.
It's a Baptist church. I'm sure they,
Oh, Baptist church made out. All right. What are you
yeah,
gonna
the
do?
show moved on, according to Steve, to the Upper West Side long ago.
Yep.
Upper West Side. Okay,
Steve,
all right,
Steve,
great.
you mentioned the
I want
maps.
to ask a question. It's Susan Amsterdam.
Go, Susan.
Susan.
Hi, this is a question about your tours specifically. Do you rent a bus, or do everybody meet at the site of wherever you're going? How does it work?
That,
Go ahead.
that, the second choice you mentioned, we don't have a bus. That would be another level. We're not there yet. One day maybe. But for right now, we all meet at a specific location depending on where we're going. And, you know, we meet usually at 10 o'clock and we walk around for a couple of hours, and then we have lunch lunch is optional, at a featured restaurant that we always go to, depending on the site. It's part of the flavor of the area. So if it's the Lower East Side, we go to Katz's, and it's part of the flavor of that neighborhood. But yeah, we meet there. So you'd have to get yourself there to the meeting spot. And if you can't, you know, we can work with you. We've done that before. So
Yeah, we can find somebody who's,
either going or,
right, can get you there,
right.
or get anyone there,
Thank you.
of course.
Sure.
Other
This was
questions?
a fun presentation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
The maps you showed us,
Right.
are they available to anyone interested, or do you have to go on a tour to
Yes.
get them?
No. Those are free and they are available to anyone who's interested.
How do we
All
get
I
them?
need, all I need is an email from you, and maybe I can show the last slide. I don't know how easy
So
that
just
would be.
tell them.
Steve K 714@gmail.com.
Or you can send it to kornblittours@gmail.com.
Right,
Sounds easier.
just get me your email, and we will be putting it together and sending it back out.
And those maps tell about places to eat, and they give you what other information are on your maps?
Okay, when you, I couldn't put it in the presentation, but when you get the link to get to that map, when you click on A, when you click on B, when you click on C, up comes a picture of what you're looking for. So up comes a picture of the building, a quick little description, and it would be very handy if you're going with your cell phone from spot to spot. You'll know what you're looking for.
And you
Okay.
put the restaurants on.
Oh, and the restaurants are on the map as well.
Excellent.
I don't want anyone to starve when they're out there in the Lower East Side.
And everyone should know that this program has been recorded, and it'll be on the Synagogue Temple Israel website, synagogue.org. So if you want to go, it becomes a YouTube video. We have a YouTube channel. So all our programs, if you've missed them, you can go back to synagogue.org. There's a link there to the YouTube channel, and you can select the presentation, this one or another one you may have missed. So that's an important piece you should know. Any other last questions? If not, then Steve, I want to say, and Susan, thank you so much. Let me just do a commercial quickly and say that coming up on the 3rd of June is Jerry Zaks. Jerry Zaks is going to be sharing his personal family's history about the Holocaust, because Jerry has a strong belief that we need to keep the Holocaust and the stories of the Holocaust in our minds, and make people aware and continue the legacy of this tragedy, but it is part of our history and people should know. So his personal family history is there. He's done extensive research. You're going to want to see it on Thursday, June 3rd. And many other programs we'll talk to you more about. Even got Congressman Gottheimer on the 29th of June will also make the presentation. So Steve and Susan, thank you again. Temple Israel is really proud of you, and everyone who's been here tonight. learned a little bit more, and I'm sure there's a lot more questions they have, and they now know how to get a hold of you. And we were privileged to have you share this presentation with us tonight.
Yes,
Thank
thank you so much. It was really illuminating and fun.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you, and thank you, Bob, for all your help, and thanks to Susan who keeps this ship running.